I have never been an impulsive person. I always did what was expected of me. Good grades, acceptable relationships, behaviors that made my family smile with false pride. But now, sitting at the bar of an unfamiliar place in a city where no one knew my name, I realized I was about to change that. My ex had broken me. He made me believe I was too small, too dependent, too easy to discard. He had taken everything from me and left me with nothing but a broken heart and an endless list of expectations I could never fulfill. So, when my eyes met his, that complete stranger sitting a few stools away, holding a glass of whiskey as if the weight of the world were on his shoulders, something inside me ignited. He was dangerously handsome, with a chiseled jaw, dark, intense eyes, and a slightly rumpled suit as if he had been through something he didn't want to discuss. He looked like an unresolved puzzle, a book with torn pages, and I wanted to be the one to uncover his story. Maybe it was the alcohol, or the anger, or the desperate need to prove to myself that I still had control over my life. But when I realized it, I was already saying, "What if we got married?" The silence that followed was almost deafening. The stranger blinked once, his expression unchanged. I expected him to laugh, or roll his eyes, or tell me I was crazy. But he just tilted his head slightly, studying my face as if trying to decipher whether I was serious. The problem? I was serious. Marriage? His voice was deep, a little hoarse. Yeah. I crossed my arms, trying to appear more confident than I actually was. You seem like you're running away from something. I'm running away from myself. We can run away together. A smirk appeared on his lips. Is this what? A marriage proposal for convenience? I don't know if there's convenience in it. I shrugged. I just know I'm tired of being predictable. He didn't respond immediately. He just looked at me for a few more seconds, as if searching for something in me that would make him say no. Then something in his expression changed. All right. I blinked. What? All right. He swirled the glass in his hand. Let's get married. My heart raced. I hoped he would refuse. I hoped he would laugh and go back to his whiskey. But he had accepted. And now, I could back out. Say it was a joke. Pretend I didn't want this. But when he stood up, tall and confident, and reached out his hand to me, something stopped me from giving up. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was exactly what I needed. So, I took it. And that's how it all began. The wedding took place in a small chapel, without pomp, without planning. She felt a thrilling adrenaline. He, on the other hand, seemed too calm. But when he held her hand for the first time, something inside her said that maybe this wasn't a mistake. If someone had told me I would marry a complete stranger that night, I would have laughed. But there I was, in a small chapel lit by yellowed lights, wearing a dress that barely suited the occasion, and a cheap ring we bought at the first open store we found. And on the other side of the altar, he. I still didn't know almost anything about him. His name? Nathaniel Carter. But he said I could call him Nate. I knew his voice was hoarse, that his eyes were a dark brown that seemed to hold secrets, and that he hadn't hesitated once since he accepted my crazy proposal. The officiant, an elderly man with thick glasses and a monotone voice, cleared his throat. Are you sure about this? My throat went dry. I wasn't sure about anything. But when I looked at Nate, he didn't seem to hesitate. His gaze met mine, and for a moment, I felt something different. As if, in some inexplicable way, he knew me. And then he said, "Yes." My skin tingled. The sound of the word hit me harder than I expected. The officiant turned to me. "And you?" My breath caught, but I wasn't going to back down. Yes. The wedding was quick. No party, no guests, just two random witnesses who happened to be there. When Nate slipped the ring onto my finger, I felt a wave of adrenaline rush through my body. I was married, to a man I had known for less than 24 hours. And yet, when we left the chapel and the cold night wind hit my face, I felt free for the first time in years. Nate walked beside me in silence, hands in the pockets of his dark coat. He seemed far too calm, as if marrying a stranger was something completely normal. That's when I realized he was hiding something. "You don't seem like the type to make impulsive decisions," I said, testing his reaction. A smirk appeared on his lips. "And you do?" I touched the ring on my finger, feeling its weight. "Not until today." He watched me for a moment as if assessing what he would say next. Then, without warning, he took my hand. His touch was firm, warm, but careful. And it was there, in the middle of the sidewalk, with neon lights reflecting on the wet pavement, that something inside me whispered that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a mistake. They decided to spend some time together before making any decisions about annulment. Over wine and conversations, she discovered that Nate also had his own reasons for accepting this marriage. But he didn't tell everything. Something about him seemed dark. And when he pulled her to dance in the middle of the room, the tension became impossible to ignore. The hotel was too elegant for an impulsive wedding. When Nate opened the door to the suite, I saw the glow of the chandelier hanging from the ceiling, the perfectly stretched sheets on the king-size bed, and for a moment, I thought we were in a movie. But we weren't. I was married to a man I had known for less than a day, and now, we were there, alone. "Do you want some wine?" His voice broke the silence. I watched him walk over to the minibar, grab a bottle and 2 glasses. He did everything calmly, as if we hadn't just exchanged vows without even knowing each other's last names. "I do." I sighed, kicking my shoes away before throwing myself onto the couch. He poured the glasses and handed one to me. Our fingers touched for a second. I could say it was just in my head, that it was only the alcohol making me more sensitive. But when I raised my eyes to him, I saw the hesitation in his gaze. He felt it too, and that only piqued my curiosity further. "Why did you agree to marry me?" I asked, taking a sip of the wine. Nate leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "Why did you propose?" I asked first. He chuckled softly. It wasn't a light laugh. It was something heavy, almost bitter. Maybe because marrying a stranger seemed like a smaller problem than the ones I already have. My eyebrows arched. "Does that mean you have problems?" "It means I'm a man who doesn't like questions. And I'm a woman who doesn't like mysteries." Our gazes locked. I was barefoot, sitting on the couch of a hotel that wasn't even mine, married to a stranger who held a glass of wine as if he were deliberately ignoring something he really wanted to say. And then he smiled. Slowly. Mysteriously. "Looks like we're at an impasse." 2 glasses later, the tension was different. Nate had relaxed, tossing his blazer aside and rolling up his shirt sleeves. I was different too, lighter, laughing more than I should have. That's when, out of nowhere, he stood up and reached out his hand to me. "Dance with me." I blinked. Is this an attempt to distract me from the questions I want to ask? It's an attempt to live a moment without questions. There was something hypnotic about him, something in the way he looked at me, how he held my attention effortlessly. I could have refused, but I didn't. I took his hand, and in seconds, he pulled me close. His fingers were firm on my waist. My breath hitched when I realized how close we were, our bodies almost touching. There was no music, but still, we moved. Slowly. Silently. My skin burned where he touched me. I knew it was dangerous. The more I let myself be drawn to Nate Carter, the harder it would be to exit this marriage without getting hurt. But when I lifted my eyes and saw the way he looked at me, I saw that he was fighting the same thing. The attraction between them became unbearable. When he stared at her for too long, when his touch lingered, she realized she was about to lose herself. The first kiss happened. Intense, hot, forbidden. But then, he pulled away, murmuring that this couldn't happen. The tension between us was unbearable. He still held my waist. I could still feel the heat of his touch through the thin fabric of my dress. Our bodies were too close. Close enough for me to feel his breath brush against my skin. Close enough that the silence was charged with possibilities. And then, Nate stopped moving. His eyes slid over my face slowly, studying every detail as if he were trying to memorize it. My heart raced. "What is it?" My voice came out low, almost breathless. He didn't answer immediately. He just lifted his hand, hesitantly, and brushed his fingers along the side of my face. The touch was light, but my whole body reacted. I knew what was about to happen, and I knew I shouldn't let it happen. But when he leaned his face toward mine, when his mouth was mere millimeters from mine, I didn't pull back. I wanted this. I wanted to taste the madness that had brought us here. And then, he kissed me. It was a shock. A contained explosion that, the moment it started, became impossible to stop. Nate wasn't careful. He wasn't hesitant. His kiss was firm, intense, as if he wanted to strip me of all the questions, all the doubts, all the resistance. I clung to him, my fingers gripping his shirt, pulling him closer. I didn't know where this was going to lead. I just knew that, in that moment, I didn't want to think. But then, he pulled away. Quickly, as if he had been burned. His eyes were dark, his breath ragged. I could still taste him on my lips when he murmured, "This can't happen." My mind was still spinning as I absorbed his words. And then, like a jolt, rejection hit. Then why did it happen? My voice came out quieter than I would have liked. Nate ran a hand over his face as if he were frustrated. Because it was a mistake. That word hurt more than it should have. I took a step back, feeling a knot in my throat. I didn't know why it hurt so much. Maybe because since we got married, I had been clinging to the idea that this madness meant something. But for him, maybe I was just a passing distraction. I pressed my lips together, battling the feeling of being discarded before I even understood what we had. If it was a mistake, Nate, then maybe this marriage was too. He closed his eyes for a second, as if my words had hit him. But when he opened them again, his expression was already cold, indifferent. Maybe it was. And in that moment, I knew. He was hiding something, and no matter how hard he tried to push me away, he didn't want to let me go. The illusion of a happy beginning crumbles when a secret from his past resurfaces. Someone from his past appears, revealing that Nate isn't exactly who he said he was. He tries to push her away, saying that the marriage was a mistake, but it's too late. She's already involved. I wanted to believe that this crazy story could still work out. That Nate was just trying to protect himself. There was a legitimate reason for him to kiss me so intensely, and in the next second, act like it was a mistake. But that night, his past found a way to catch up with us, and for the first time, I saw who he really was. We were sitting in a corner cafe, the kind of place where no one would notice us. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken words from the night before. Nate still avoided looking at me for too long, as if he wanted to pretend that kiss hadn't happened, and I hated the fact that it hurt me more than it should have. That's when she appeared. A woman with blonde hair, striking features, dressed in an elegant coat. She stopped a few feet away from us, her eyes fixed on Nate. He tensed instantly. It was subtle, the rigid shoulders, the way his jaw clenched, but I noticed. He knew her. And by the way she looked at him, as if she was about to explode, I realized it wasn't a casual encounter. "So this is how you disappear?" Her voice came sharp. "Marrying a stranger?" My breath caught in my throat. Nate closed his eyes for a second, as if bracing himself for something inevitable. "Eva." His tone was one of warning. My stomach churned. Eva. The name slipped from his lips with familiarity, with an intimacy I didn't understand. I looked from one to the other, trying to piece it together. "Care to tell me who she is, Nate?" My voice came out firmer than I expected. The woman laughed, but there was no humor in her smile. "Oh, darling, you should be asking me who he really is." My chest tightened. I looked at Nate, hoping he would deny it, that he would say Eva was exaggerating, that this was nothing. But he said nothing. He just stood there, silent. And that was worse than any answer. I left the cafe before my throat closed up. I knew he was following me. The sound of his footsteps behind me echoed on the wet pavement. Leave me alone. I shot back without looking. "You don't understand. I wanted to tell you." "But you didn't." I turned, facing him. "Who are you, Nate? Who are you really?" He opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. Hesitation. He was still trying to protect me from some truth I didn't know. The marriage was a mistake, he finally said, his voice lower. My chest tightened, not because of the words themselves, but because of the look in his eyes. He was trying to push me away, to protect me. And all I wanted to know was from what? It's too late for that, Nate. I took a deep breath. I'm already involved, so if there's something to tell me, do it now. But he said nothing. He just ran his hands through his hair, frustration clear on his face. And at that moment, I realized I would have to find out for myself. She wasn't going to back down without knowing the truth. Amidst fights and cutting silences, the tension between them grew to the breaking point. When he grabbed her arm and asked her to stop trying to understand him, she realized she wasn't trembling with fear, but with desire. I should have grabbed my things and left. After what happened in the cafe, after the woman who showed up out of nowhere throwing truths that Nate still refused to admit, I should have run in the opposite direction. But I didn't. Because something inside me needed to know. Because no matter how much he tried to push me away, he couldn't let me go. Night fell over the city, and I spent hours wandering the streets aimlessly. The ring on my finger felt heavier than before. I needed to confront him again. Demand answers. So I went back to the hotel, and I found Nate in the room, leaning against the wall as if he had been waiting for me. His gaze was dark, heavy. I stopped at the door. Are you going to tell me now? I crossed my arms, keeping my voice steady. He took a deep breath but didn't respond. Eva knew you, I continued, and it wasn't like any ex. Nate let out a low, humorless laugh. You won't stop until you find out, will you? No. His eyes met mine. And suddenly, he moved. Fast. He was in front of me in seconds, and before I could react, his fingers gripped my arm. My whole body froze. Not out of fear, but of something dangerous. Something that burned beneath my skin. You don't understand. His voice came low, almost like a growl. You don't know what you're asking. My heart pounded against my ribs. I could feel the contained strength in him, the heat of his touch, the tension in the air, like a wire stretched to the breaking point. Then make me understand. My voice didn't tremble. Show me who you really are, Nate. He held his breath. For a moment, I saw something break in his gaze, as if he was fighting against himself. His fingers slid down my arm, slower now, and when he took a step closer, so close that his warm breath brushed against my skin, I knew. He felt it too. But then, in an instant, he pulled back. He released my arm as if he had been burned. His gaze shifted, and when he spoke again, his voice was different. This can't happen. My chest tightened. How many times would he say that before admitting he was lying? Why? My voice came out almost a whisper. Nate ran a hand over his face, frustration evident. He wanted to answer, but he couldn't. And that only made me want it more. That night, we remained silent. But while he slept on the couch, and I watched his chest rise and fall under the dim light of the lamp, I made a promise to myself. I would find out the truth, and when that happened, he wouldn't be able to push me away anymore. The universe seemed to enjoy playing with me. Because after everything, after Nate kissed me and said it was a mistake, after Eva showed up and made me question who he really was, after every time I tried to pull away and he pushed me even further away, we were forced to spend a weekend together, married, as if we were a real couple. This is ridiculous. I huffed, crossing my arms as I stared out at the landscape through the car window. I agree, Nate replied, his voice too calm for someone who dragged me into this situation. He was driving with one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift. The late afternoon sun streamed through the glass, illuminating his strong profile, his hair slightly tousled as if he had run his hands through it a few too many times. And I hated how my chest tightened every time I looked at him. This didn't have to happen. I continued, turning to him. You could have said no. Your dad wouldn't take no for an answer. I closed my eyes for a moment, fighting against exhaustion. Because that was the truth. My dad had found out about the marriage, and instead of freaking out and demanding an immediate annulment, he decided to use it to his advantage. "Since you got married, you need to be here at the family event," he said on the phone, his voice firm, unquestionable. "And I want to meet him, in person." Which meant that now I was in a car with my fake husband, heading for a weekend full of formal dinners, suspicious glances, and expectations I couldn't meet. The worst part? I didn't know if it was just my dad who wanted to test Nate, or if, deep down, I wanted to as well. The hotel where the event would take place was one of those luxurious resorts, surrounded by mountains and perfectly manicured gardens. As soon as we entered the lobby, I felt the stares on us. My uncles, cousins, family friends, all there, analyzing my marriage as if they were waiting for me to trip and admit it was a mistake. Nate, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. He shook hands firmly, looked people in the eye when greeting them. He moved with a calculated calmness, as if he were already accustomed to that kind of environment. And I couldn't help but wonder, why? He wasn't a businessman, a lawyer, or anything that usually mingled in those events. He was an enigma. A man who appeared in my life at a bar and said yes to an absurd marriage. And now he was here, holding my hand as if he belonged to this world. And worse, as if he belonged to me. "They're watching," Nate murmured softly, too close to my ear. Chills ran down my skin. I knew he was right. We needed to look real. So when we descended for dinner, I threaded my arm through his. And when we sat down, his hand rested on my thigh, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I swallowed hard. It was a game. Just a game. But when I looked at him, at the way he watched me as if he could see beyond the facade I always showed my family, I forgot there were other people in the room. And I realized that pretending was no longer an option. Later, when we were finally alone in the room, the weight of that day fell on me. I let out a sigh and started to take off my earrings, preparing for a long night of confusing thoughts. But then, I felt Nate approach, slowly, calculated. I turned to him, my heart racing when I realized how close he was. His eyes dropped to my mouth for a second. And then he spoke. I should never have agreed to this marriage. My chest tightened, but before I could say anything, he continued. "Because now I can't imagine you being away from me." My breath caught. It was the last thing I heard before his mouth took mine. This time he didn't pull away. This time he pulled me to him with the certainty of someone who had finally accepted the inevitable. And this time, I knew everything was about to change. What started as an impulsive marriage became something real. But the fear of ruining everything haunted both of us. And when an unexpected event threatened to separate them, she realized she couldn't let him go without first telling the truth. She loved him. I didn't know how we got here. An impulsive marriage, a series of wrong decisions, unspoken secrets. But now, as Nate kissed me like there were no more barriers between us, I realized that none of it mattered. What had started as madness was now real. I felt it in every touch, in every stifled sigh, in every time he pulled me closer, as if he never wanted to let me go again. But then, he stopped. Slowly. As if the weight of some unspoken truth had fallen on him. I still had my eyes closed when I heard his breath falter. And then came the blow. This isn't going to last. I opened my eyes. He was standing there, inches from me, but he felt farther away than ever. "What do you mean by that?" My voice came out weaker than I would have liked. Nate looked away, running a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated with himself. "I don't know how to be the man you deserve." I stepped back a step. My chest tightened. "What does that mean, Nate? Do you want to leave?" Silence. The answer he wouldn't give was worse than anything he could have said. My heart broke a little, because deep down I already knew. He felt something for me. But he was fighting against it as if loving were some kind of crime. And maybe for him it was. The next few hours were a blur. Nate didn't show up for breakfast, not for lunch. I knew he was avoiding me, trying to distance himself before it was too late for him. But for me, it was already too late. And when I heard one of my cousins mention that he had been seen at the hotel bar, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let him escape without a fight. The bar was dark, lit only by a few yellowish lights. I found Nate sitting in the corner, a glass of whiskey in hand. He saw me before I could say anything. His body tensed. "Are you running away from me?" I asked, sitting down beside him. I just needed some time to think. His voice was low, hoarse. "And did you come to any conclusions?" He twirled the glass in his hands. "The closer I get to you, the harder it is to let you go." My heart skipped a beat. But before I could respond, he continued. "But I have to go." The words hit my chest like a cold wave. "No." My voice faltered. "You can't decide this alone." Nate closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. When he opened them again, there was something dark in them. "You don't understand." He turned to me, his expression heavy. "I'm trying to protect you." I swallowed hard. "Protect me from what?" He hesitated. And it was in that instant, that second, that I realized. He wasn't leaving because he didn't want to stay. He was leaving because he thought he couldn't. And I wasn't going to let that happen. "I love you, Nate." The words came out before I could hold them back, and the impact of them made his face harden. His eyes searched mine, his breath caught, and I saw it. I saw the exact moment he realized he couldn't run away anymore. But I also saw the fear in him, because for Nate Carter, love was a risk. And I just wanted to know if he was willing to take that risk for me. Nate didn't respond. He stood there motionless, as if the words had been an unexpected blow, as if hearing that I loved him was harder than anything he had ever faced. I wanted him to say something, anything. But all I received was silence, and that silence hurt. I left the bar without looking back. I had exposed myself. I had opened my heart to him. And in the end, Nate left me alone. I didn't see him for the rest of the night. Not the next morning. My chest was heavy, my mind torn between anger and hurt. Because as much as it hurt to admit, maybe he was right. Maybe the marriage was a mistake. Maybe I was a mistake. And for the first time, I considered leaving without waiting for him. But then, he returned. I was on the hotel terrace, watching the gray sky when I heard his footsteps behind me. I should have ignored him, pretend I didn't care. But when I turned and saw his face, something inside me crumbled. He looked shattered. His eyes were tired, his jaw clenched. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly before speaking. "I love you." My heart stopped. But before I could react, he continued. "I love you, but I don't know if I can be the man you deserve." I stepped closer. "Let me decide that." He looked at me, as if searching for some certainty in my eyes. And then, without warning, he pulled me to him. It was a desperate kiss, full of everything we hadn't said before. He held my face tightly, as if he wanted to make sure I was real, as if he had finally chosen to stay. And I knew, in that moment, that there was no turning back. Nate's kiss was different this time. There was no hesitation. There was no struggle. There was surrender. His fingers held my face as if I were the only thing that mattered. As if, after so long running away, he had finally decided to stay. And I knew. In that moment, with our bodies pressed together, his warm breath against my skin, I knew that everything had changed. He chose me, and I would choose him, every time. The following days passed too quickly. We returned to the city not quite knowing how to move forward, but with a silent certainty that now it was us against the world. The marriage was no longer an impulse. It was real. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. On the morning we signed the papers to make everything official, to make this marriage ours for real, without craziness, without running away, Nate held my hand before I signed. His eyes met mine, that deep brown filled with meaning. "Are you sure?" His voice was low. "I'm your favorite mistake, but you don't have to make it an everlasting commitment." I smiled slightly. "Maybe you're not a mistake anymore." He pulled me closer, brushing his lips against mine before whispering, "Then let me prove it. Every day." And I let him. Because in the end, it wasn't fate that brought us together. It was the choice to stay with each other. And this time, when he kissed me, it was a promise. One that I knew he would never break. So, what did you think of this story? Would you have done anything different in her place? Tell me in the comments.